to order. We have some members tied up in education. They seem to be having more fun than we are today, and so we're struggling for a quorum. But Senator Albers, would you open us up with an invocation?
It'd be my pleasure. Please bow your heads. Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for the opportunity of reconvening this important committee. And Lord, just ask you to give us your wisdom, your discernment, and your grace as we make good decisions to serve the people of Georgia. For it's your most holy name we make our prayer. Amen.
Amen. And so we first all need to adopt our rules. The rules are the exact same as last year. So moved in a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. So we will keep the same rules in place. And we have a lot of bills, and so I'm trying to get going. At the same time, we didn't get some fiscal notes yet, so some of this is just have to be heard today and voted on next week. But we will start with Senator Burns, if you want to come up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the committee. This is SB 24. It's LC 442898. This is a bill that we passed out of the Senate last year. It deals with historic property tax assessment. Currently, under current Georgia law, if you have a qualifying commercial property, not residential, but commercial property, income producing property, if you choose to, you can get an 8-year assessment freeze, so that whatever the property's value was at the point that it entered the program, that would be frozen as the assessed value of the property for a period of 8 years. What this legislation does, after a number of conversations with my colleagues and my constituents in Richmond County, Georgia, 8 years is insufficient for a developer to be able to rehabilitate that property. What they've asked for is the ability to extend that at the local level. It's not required, but by local action, by local commission decision, they can extend that for a period of up to 12 years. So instead of having a tax assessed value frozen for 8, it could be as many as 20. Now you say, what's the value of that? It ensures that these downtown historic district properties that have been, in many cases, abandoned, they can be redeveloped into commercially viable environments. In our case, in the Augusta region, it's housing. It's inner city student and workforce housing. That's the target. And I would say that it is an option if the community chooses to pursue it. It is not required. It is not a tax deferral. It's not a tax credit, excuse me. It is essentially a tax deferral. South Carolina has been very successful utilizing this type of an approach for the last dozen years or so, and it's made a major impact. If you look at what's happened in Greenville or in South Carolina or Columbia, South Carolina, even Anderson, South Carolina, and Aiken, South Carolina, you're seeing enormous amounts of benefits from legislation like this. I'd appreciate the committee's favorable consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Burns, thank you for bringing this forward. I just want to make sure we're all understanding. This is really a local control issue. It has nothing to do with state funding because it would be local property taxes collected. So this is really an investment that the locals want to make, knowing that it'll be a long-term return.
Correct. And this is a local decision. In some cases, property's been taken off the tax rolls and would be permanently removed. This does not permanently remove the property. It freezes the assessed value. And then it goes, after a period of time, that way it doesn't have to be 20. It can be 12, it can be 8, 12, 16, whatever the community chooses to make for its own environment.
At the appropriate time, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion.
All right, are there any other questions before we have a motion? All right, I think the floor is open for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I make a motion we pass Senate Bill 24 LC 442898.
We have a second from Senator Estevez. All in favor, raise your hand. Unanimous vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks for coming back.
I'm grateful.
We got it out last year, we're getting it out this year.
That's right. We're gonna get it out. We got to
The
get some
house
help
is-
from our friends
The house
over
is
the
your
other side.
problem, yeah,
That's it. Thank you, sir.
thanks. Senator Watson, would you like to come up? So we've got a Senate bill and a Senate resolution.
Yes, sir.
If you want to speak to those, give us your LC numbers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 45 is LC 442941. And I'll just speak to it first. It's obviously the enabling legislation for this constitutional amendment, which is SR 56, LC 442940. This is dealing with our conservation use program in our state. We had a Senate study committee that met over the summer dealing with how do we preserve our farmland in our state, and this was one of the recommendations that was brought forward from that committee. Current law only allows a single individual to obtain a 2,000 acre maximum limit of land in their name. If they own or purchase more than 2,000 acres in their name, then they are taxed at the regular tax rate that any land that's not in use, conservation use. So basically what's happening in our state is a lot of our farmers are having to, if they own more than 2,000 acres of land, they're having to put it in their spouse's name, they're having to put it in their children's name. And as you all know, our farms across the state and across our nation, the family farm is getting larger, and things are changing in agriculture, so obviously you have to have more acres and economies of scale and different things. So this was one of the problems that we saw, that it's shouldn't be an impact on local governments, because farmers are obviously utilizing this program because they're doing what they need to do to put it in their spouse's name, put it in their children's name, to maintain that tax break. And we're just wanting to clean that up for them, to allow them to grow that family farm, hold on to that land, and not have to get silly with all the rules. This was obviously created a long time ago, and things have changed, and that's all we're doing here. I'd be glad to take any questions.
So you put it in your wife's name, then you get a divorce and all kinds of problems. Huh? Is
Yes,
that-
sir. That could be
Yeah.
the case.
All right, we do need this is one we do need a fiscal note on that we didn't get yet. Maybe we're over aggressive, but maybe we can talk the bill out itself, and then any questions and go forward. So any questions from the committee?
Well, I had a fiscal note question.
Okay.
Substantial. Thank you.
Yeah, and we've got several people signed up to speak. Jake, I think that says Tench is your name with the Georgia Agribusiness Council, if you want to come up and speak. You can stay there, Sam. Senator Watson, I mean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'll be super brief. I just wanted to come up and say that Georgia Agribusiness Council is fully supportive of this. We've seen this issue in a number of places around the state where, as farms are trying to grow as they need to stay in business, they're running into this issue that could possibly lead to more issues down the road if something were to happen. But we are fully supportive, and thank you for your time.
All right, and then we've got Adam Bellflower, who's going to say me too, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee. Appreciate y'all letting us get up here and just voice our support. My name's Adam Bellflower, work with Georgia Farm Bureau. We represent all commodities and producers across the state. And just wanted to note, I think it's important to note as you look at this bill, it does not, I don't think it's necessarily for all commodities. I think the biggest commodities you will see impacted by this just from your row crop commodities. That was just kind of a point of clarification. I don't think all farms in Georgia are eager to take advantage of this, but there are some commodities that this will be very beneficial for as their farms change and the dynamics of their farming operations change. So thank you all for y'all's consideration, and be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the committee? All right, well, thank you for coming up. And then we've got Dante Handel from the ACCG.
Good afternoon, Chairman Ufsteller, members of the committee. Dante Handel with ACCG. Appreciate your time this afternoon. Just wanted to say that ACCG does not have a position on the bill currently, but we are still researching the fiscal impacts of the bill as well as which corporations or other entities may qualify. So still doing some digging. Be glad to report back once we have that.
All right. So there's a tentative, statement there, I guess, we'll say. Okay, any questions of the committee? As I said, we've got to wait and see the dollar impact, but yeah, okay. Let's see, your number what, 2?
2, yeah.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have a question, I just have a comment. I was on that study committee, and I will tell you, we've got to do everything we can to protect our agriculture industry and our farmers. It's our #1 business in our state. They're under tremendous pressure on cost of equipment. I mean, I was shocked at some of the things, and I think the average age of a beginning farmer is 47 years old. We've got to do something to encourage these young kids that are coming out with an agriculture degree to get into farming and figure that out and how they can get into that business, because I'm worried about the family farm. I'm worried about agriculture. I think it's a national security issue. You know, the senator from the 31st and I worked last year on a bill that made sure these countries that are foreign adversaries can't buy our farmland. But we got to take care of our Georgia farmers, and I know we want to see a fiscal note, but I just want to tell you I learned a lot on that study committee. And Senator, wouldn't the average age of a farmer 65? If they started, the average age of a farmer entering the agriculture industry or having a farm is 47 years old. And then the average age of a farmer is 65 years old. We got to get some young people involved in farming, and we just got to figure how to work that out. But there's ways to do that. But I just want to make those comments, and I want to make sure we're doing everything we can to protect agriculture in this state. Thank you.
All right, and your number 4?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and I echo the sentiments of my colleague, Chairman Beach. I was also on the committee and agree with you, Chairman Watson. What piqued my interest was hearing the word corporation, because I think that's one of the reasons farmers have to continue to grow, is because they're competing against larger corporations. Can you, or maybe it's a question for Dante or for you, to address to what extent do we see corporations using or benefiting from this tool? Because that would concern me, because we need to protect the family-owned farm.
Definitely, and I'm glad you asked that question, Senator, because I was actually going to emphasize that just in my closing statement, that this is still strictly tied to the family farm and the family farm entity. If you look on page 2, I mean, family-owned farm entity is in there about 10 or 12 times. So we're still maintaining that family farm entity. We're not allowing corporations or anyone to benefit from this program, which is important to make sure that we do that. And as long as it's that family farm entity, they still qualify. We're just basically saying, as that entity, instead of having the 2,000 acre cap, we're going to raise it to 4,000 acres. Currently, everybody's using I think the limit is 2,000 per name. So obviously you can now, between you and your spouse, have 4,000 acres. So is my understanding of the law, but we want to definitely make sure that we protect that.
All right. Senator Antipartarte is next here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just be very brief. I mean, I just want to say I agree with Senator Beach. The other thing I want to remind folks is, I know Senator Watson, you've been working on this for a couple of years, and even the findings that Senator Beach references from last year happened before a generational storm also impacted our state, which I think some people in the parts of the state, others may not remember that. So I just want to say that for the record. And I think the other part too is, I know our ag chairman, we've talked about over the last 7 to 10 days, just the global financial pressures on the family farm, on top of the storm, on top of everything else that's happening right now, is creating a significant strain to keep our #1 position to do business. So I'm supportive of this bill. I know we need to wait on the note, but we'd like to see this bill move forward through the Senate, and hopefully gets favorable consideration in the House. Thank you for working on this.
Thank you.
All right. Senator Orrock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I know, our farmer slash legislator, Senator Watson, gets up every day and goes to bed every night with these matters at the forefront. It's the real world in which you live and make your living and provide, Georgia-grown products to Georgians throughout the year. So I appreciate you. And my question was, is family-owned farm entity, is that defined anywhere in law already? It may or may not be. I don't know the answer to that question.
I would have to go back and look, but we've made several changes over the years with our conservation use because farming has changed. And I know a few years back we made some changes to allow a family farm entity to purchase land, and some of that was in the sense of what the chairman mentioned over here about, we're losing our farmers, so sons and daughters are not necessarily coming back to the farm, and we've got neighbors that are partnering up with neighbors, and they're both farmers, but if they buy land together, prior to the laws that we changed with that, they were in violation and they could not receive conservation use. So we changed that law several years ago to allow neighbors, as long as that you're a farmer and I'm a farmer and we're going to maintain the farm use, then we're that family farm entity, and we're able to purchase that land and farm that land and use that land and still get the conservation use and the tax breaks. So I'm pretty
it's been
sure.
refined a little bit. Chris.
Yes, ma'am. We've had to do this with land. We've had to do this with equipment, and so this is just another piece that we've overlooked as we've moved through some of this code section and updating it.
Thank you.
I just remembered I was with Senator Watson Tuesday evening, and I found out that was his 19th wedding anniversary, and he was leaving his wife alone back home. So I understand you not wanting to put this in her name. I completely. I think this is a self-interest bill right here myself, but we'll see.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't tell her where we had dinner that night, so maybe I'm okay.
He's a braver man than me. We will. I think the committee is very supportive. It sounds like we will wait on the fiscal note and get you back here. Sorry we couldn't handle it today, but I was hopeful we could. But thanks for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman,
see
members
you.
of the committee.
Thank you. All right, we've got the blueberry farmer. Yeah, South Georgia millionaire, thousands.
I wish that was the case, Mr. Chairman.
Thousands of. How many blueberry bushes are there anyway?
Not near as many as we had before the hurricane, I can tell you that.
That's a fair point. All right, this is another one that we've got a fiscal question on, and I think there's actually maybe a constitutional question that may need some work on it too, but go ahead and present your bill.
Yes, sir. This is Senate Bill 52, working off LC 500970. This bill has been, the lead sponsors besides myself are the pro tem, the appropriations chairman, the majority leader, and the minority leader. And I think we have close to 40 co-sponsors on this bill. If you just would give me just a second, Mr. Chairman, I want to tell y'all what it's been like for us in South Georgia with this hurricane. The sun went down, and when the sun came back up, we had lost a third of our ag industry in the state of Georgia, a third. I was 11 days getting power back at my house. In my home county, we were 26 days getting fully restored for power. We've suffered a loss that is generational. I met recently with our Commissioner of Agriculture and a friend that is with Farm Service Agency, and I think the block grant portion of the disaster relief that was going to go to timber and pecans and blueberries and produce is going to be woefully inadequate to even begin to cover the loss. So we suffered a $1.28 billion loss just in timber. This state is 38 million acres of land in the state of Georgia. 24 million acres of that 38 million acres is forest land. 37% of that 24 million acres was either damaged or destroyed. The effects of this storm are going to be felt really for a long time to come. Timberland owners that would normally be selling timber for $20 a ton are selling wood for $2 a ton. And I had the pro tem, he came down to my county during the storm, and he saw firsthand the devastation, and he was gracious enough to have James Beal, before James left the pro tem's office, to help me draft this legislation. As y'all know, I'm not a farmer. But I will tell you this, I live in the second poorest county in the state of Georgia, okay? I live somewhere where I know what poverty looks like up close, and it does make a difference in how you see the world. These rural counties depend on the timber tax to be able to fund our schools and our local governments. The timber tax is taxed not on a volume amount, but on a dollar amount. So my little rural county, the total budget for the entire county is about $7 million. The timber tax makes up about $700,000 of that $7 million. And so what would have normally been a $700,000 income is going to be maybe $150,000 income, because it's being, the tax is being levied on such a smaller dollar amount. When you look at the fact we're looking at a $370 million hopefully block grant to cover up a hole that's probably more like $2.5 billion, we've got to do on the state level what we can to help these rural communities. And that's what this bill does. The TREES Act, the Timberlands Recovery Exemption and Earning Stability Act. What it does is for the counties that were declared FEMA disaster counties, it suspends the severance tax for the last quarter of 24 and for all of year 25 while we're trying to harvest all this storm damaged wood. And as well, it creates a grant program that those counties can apply to the state and be able to get compensated on what their last 3 years average was on the timber tax. Now keep in mind, the effects of this are going to be felt much, much further in these rural communities for at least 10 years, because timber that would have been cut 3 years from now for $25 a ton is being cut for $2 a ton. This legislation will make a difference in these rural communities, and it also helps. I have seen more grown men that ordinarily would die and go to hell before they would show another man any weakness, break down in tears in front of me because of what they've been faced with and the losses that they have that they've sustained, and it's going to take a long time overcoming it. But that's what this bill is. This bill is a response to the largest natural disaster in this state's history. And, you know, I would, obviously we've had a lot of broad support within the Senate, and I know we're waiting on the fiscal note, Mr. Chairman, but I'd be glad to take any questions. And also I have James Beal here if you have any. As y'all know, I may have a yeoman's degree in law, but I certainly don't have, I'm not a lawyer, but.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, Chairman Goodman, the work you have done to help our farmers and agriculture in this state is seconded by nobody but the Ag Commissioner himself. So I want to first just thank you for the work you have done. You and I have talked about this on many an occasion. My question is, we need to get help unquestionably. Question is, how do we do that in the most effective manner? And we have, thank God, record surpluses in our state and undesignated reserves, and I believe the governor's working on some additional funding based on what the feds may or may not finally get to us. I'm just wondering if there's a simpler, more direct way to do this than we are today. So I actually want to get you help faster and maybe even a little bit easier, although I applaud the great work that you and James put on the bill. I do fear that constitutionally there could be a challenge here, and I just don't want it to get held up in the courts when the folks need the help right now. And if we can do some direct appropriations in order to do that, I think that might be one other area we should consider looking at.
One thing that we deal with, as you know, Senator, is thank you for those kind words. The gratuities clause really limits our ability to help some of these folks, and so that's, you know, we're looking at ways that we can get help to these people, and you know, there's a lot of legal, I guess, ways that you have to get around this. And so, do you want to speak, James, to the constitutionality of it?
I'd be happy to, Mr. Chairman, if that's okay with you.
Well, if you want to, or we can have that discussion before the next meeting too, maybe with Ledge Council and all of us, if you want to. But if you want to speak right now, you're welcome to.
James Beal, I was previously with the Pro Tem's office, and then was asked to work on this. So this is a bit of pro bono work, I guess I'm doing here. Just real quick on the constitutionality, and then we can obviously get into the details if you'd like. But in 2022, the people of this state voted to amend the Constitution to allow for ad valorem tax to be suspended or to be removed from properties that are subject to a disaster declaration and that are destroyed. So that is a fairly new constitutional amendment. It was voted up by the people and is now part of the Constitution. Obviously, it has not been tested in court as far as I know, but this is one way because of how timber is treated under our tax laws as property. But it's fairly unique because the ad valorem tax takes effect upon severance or harvest. So it's a fairly unique piece of property, so to speak. So yes, this bill, because of the challenge that was put towards myself and the office, it is new. It is a new way of trying to implement that constitutional amendment, which again was passed by the people.
Good.
All right, and not speaking that directly, but to the philosophy itself, you know, I haven't supported in the past. I know there were efforts to have people basically permanently remove property taxes in essence from one county and have the people of the state of Georgia from all the other counties pay their property taxes is what I would look at, and I wouldn't support that. This is a temporary measure.
Yes, sir. This is a temporary measure in response to the largest natural disaster that's ever befallen the state of Georgia. This is not a long-term policy change. It is a temporary response to the disaster that we received in
Right,
Hurricane
and
Irma.
I think we all want to find a way to help in this situation, no doubt. And I think the governor's got about 600-something million dedicated, and hopefully we can find a way to do this too. So that was just my comment. Senator Albers.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. And I'm wondering, based on that, I hear what you're saying, James, and thank you. We might still potentially run afoul. Why couldn't we simply grant this amount of money we need to GEMA, set up GEMA, basically a disaster relief insurance fund that cities and counties could apply to based on that, and just do it that way, this on a temporary basis just for this disaster?
Well, the challenge put to me was to incentivize, specifically reforestation and things like that of these properties. And so because this is a tax that's very unique in the law as it applies to just only standing timber when it's cut down, the idea, I think, behind it, and I believe that the whereas clauses or the findings will speak to this a little bit more, but the idea was to incentivize that continued, like that regrowth.
Completely understand. I think if we set it up that way, you could still do it, because if you set it up through GEMA as a grant, and it was basically insurance is made to cover current future, right? It should be able to encapsulate the whole thing depending on how we wrote it. We probably don't need to vet it out right here, but I would love for us to talk offline to see if there is another either additional and or separate measure that we could do to even expedite the process.
So, and that's the thing, I guess, timber is a 20-year crop. And so when when you pay taxes on property for 20 years and then you don't get paid for that crop, and then you're having to pay the severance tax on what little bit you get, which is 1/10 of what you would have got otherwise, it does create a pretty large difficulty of being able to then grow another crop, not get paid for the last crop, and pay property taxes again for another 20 years. And in rural Georgia, we depend on those property taxes and to be able to fund our school. I've got my wife's a public school teacher, my kids are in public school, so that's the intent, not only to help these folks, not only to help these timberland owners, but also to help these rural communities.
And one other note, if I may, Senator, one thing that I think that wasn't mentioned, and that's my fault, is that this is subject to local authorization. So the counties, which the amount due to the county, the amount in tax is due to the county. It's not due to the state. So the county would actually have to, authorize this.
All right, Senator Beach, you had a,
That's interesting with GMA. That's an interesting concept, but I also wanted to ask Mr. Beal, would there be any way, because of the gratuities clause, to utilize development authorities to give some kind of tax abatements or tax incentives or help in this situation?
I'd have to look into that, but it's my understanding that, with I don't believe that their authority, put it this way, the timberland tax, that severance tax is very unique in the law. It is a constitutionally required tax. And so I'm not sure if development authorities have authority over that specific tax.
And Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, you bring up something about GDA as well. To give you an idea for the need in these rural communities, we as a state, we put $100 million in GDA, $25 million went to forestry, $75 million went to agriculture for low interest loans to farmers. As of the end of the deadline, we're about $43 million short in that fund to be able to cover the loans that came in for the deadline. When you include the loans requests of eligible people that came in just after the deadline, it's about $108 million total. So that kind of speaks a little bit to the need in these communities. I'm doing everything that I can, trying to talk with all the powers that be to try to get more money in that fund to help these folks.
all right, and Senator Estevez.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to appreciate you for bringing this bill and for trying to come up with a way to directly help the folks who have been impacted by this generational storm. And I know you've spent a lot of time and effort in this, and I look forward to continuing to work with you to figure out ways to relieve some of that impact that was felt. So I just wanted to thank you for that, and certainly look forward to seeing the fiscal note and then going from there.
Thank you.
All right, well, I think you understand we're all supportive and committed to making something happen here.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
We do
Mr.
want to
Chairman.
make sure we do it the right way.
Sure, I understand
And that's what
completely.
we're trying to do. And we also like to have fiscal notes so that we don't.
And can I add one more thing? Just if it's okay, Mr.
Sure.
Chairman, 30 seconds. The average of the last 7 years of the timber tax that's collected across the entire state is about $21 million. So that's across the entire state. This is only going to affect the counties that were declared FEMA disaster areas. So we're not talking about hundreds of millions of dollars.
No, I understand that for sure. Yeah, we just like to
No, I understand
have the
completely.
numbers when we do
Sure.
it. All right, I don't think there's any other discussion we can do at this time on this. We'll get to the issues, and with that, we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you all for
Thank you,
being
Mr.
here.
Chairman.